Hello there, I am Mafuzo Piri, the Malayan gentleman this book is about. It's my true story, and I'm glad that I've made so much progress. I've shared my life experiences so that others can read and change their opinions about people like myself.
Hello, and a hearty welcome to our live book lunch. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can remember, I ran a flash non-fiction short story competition, didn't I? A flash simply means a short story. And quite a few people from the sub-region entered. And one of the people that did was a gentleman who at that time we were referring to as Ichiku, weren't we? And then, ladies and gentlemen, if you've stayed with this platform, you will remember that Dorcas won the flash fiction competition. Dorcas is a Nigerian lady, and her story, Monster Camp, was one we'd never had before. And she came in her first place. She was at the top of the leaderboard. Raimondo from Malawi was second, and the third place was contested, wasn't it? Because we had a gentleman called SS, I'm not going to say his name, who thought he should have won. So initially he was third, wasn't he? And then because it gave me a bit of back chat, he was disqualified. So it meant that Obita moved up to third place. So there was a person that wasn't shortlisted, but he was in the long list. I'm just going to put this down. And if you remember, we were referring to him by the name of Izuku. And then he later on became Mavatu PV. And that's the name we've used in the book. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are in a country where you are able to purchase the book, I do hope you could do so. It's available on Amazon. You could download an ebook as well, if you have the means and resources to do so. To those of you who haven't, I am going to try to read segments of it. I'm going to go grab my glasses and sit at my computer so I can read a portion of it. Ladies and gentlemen, I must say thank you to the artists that have supported us. A big thank you goes to Tamba Johnson for his song. I think it goes by the name Yanni. And to Alpha Kamara, who penned a song especially for the book launch. And to all of you who have participated in one way or the other, thank you so much. I am going to go sit some more where I can read with my glasses on. Have you got your virtual cake? Have you got your mowa? Clara said to me, beer is mowa, because I thought beer was cachaça, you know. It turns out that cachaça is quite strong as well. And cachaça is a major theme in the book. Speaking of which, you'll hear more about that in a second.
me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god. Let's go. I'm about to go off like a weapon. Fuel to the top, got a filled up engine. In my thoughts, obsession. I will not stop, no, I'm never second guessing. I got a God complex. Haters love to hate, but I never feel pressed. Got a lot on my plate, but I never get stressed. I'll take all the pressure like I'm acing this test. Tear it up like I'm Jason. I see the world like it's ready for the taking. I see this place like a game I'm playing. Straight to the bank to collect my payments. No negotiations, it's my way, I was born impatient. And like a damn Freemason, I'll run this nation. They call me a god. 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 I don't know how to stop. I just go till I drop. Whether it's working or shots, give it all that I got. You can watch me work in my element. Anyone in the way is irrelevant. You wanna cross me, cool, not intelligent. Cause I don't forget shit like an elephant. Go ahead and tempt me, put it on the line and you'll come up empty. If I got time, I'm deadly. Never caught off guard, no, I'm always ready. I got a hand real steady. Look me in the eye and you'll see no hezzy. About to get real messy. I'll put you in a grave 6 feet like Kenny. They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
I was just having some Nissima on Amazon. I don't know what this Chihuahua lady put in her Nissima. I just had a look at the ingredients. She's flour, water, chamber. I don't know what chamber is, but it does this good in our Nissima. I'm learning all these Chihuahua words. I beg your pardon. Where did I get Chihuahua from? Chihuahua words. Have you let the little puppy out? The Chihuahua? Thank you. And the story moves forward. Zumba. 2 salami. Let me have some water. I've not any cachaça. It's just water. The story moves from Salima to Blantyre. Blantyre. I've got a long way to go, haven't I? To Lilongwe and Nino. And if you want to know what Nino's who the real Ezekiel is, you want to stay with us when we reveal the mysterious Ezekiel into. Let me have some more water. And I'm going to go off and have some more this summer with Chanda. And don't tell the place. I go on Amazon. Ladies and gentlemen, do stay with us for the book launch in June. Well, hello, and a warm welcome to a book launch. It's D-Day, isn't it? Bear with me, I'm going to be facing sideways because that's where my book is. I'm going to be reading from a copy of Mr. and Miss Received. Ladies and gentlemen, if you followed us on the roller coaster journey, you would remember that this all commenced with a short story writing competition, didn't it? It started with a flash non-fiction. First of all, people had to get used to writing non-fiction, which simply means a true story. And then we ran a short story competition, didn't we? As I've mentioned, the almighty Dorcas won it. Dorcas is a Nigerian lady, and she won it with the story Monster Camp, which looked at feminist themes. Second was Raimundo. Raimundo is a teacher. He teaches English to secondary school in Malawi. Third was Obita Kingsley, who I like to call Chinua Achebe. Ladies and gentlemen, however, a story stood out like a sore thumb. It stood out because I thought I'm never going to be able to have someone who's willing to tell this story in sub-Saharan Africa ever again. I thought it was very brave of this gentleman to want to talk about this, because often in our circles in sub-Saharan Africa, the theme of mental illness is a taboo. Often people equate being mentally ill with being demon-possessed and being cursed by someone. They think a mental illness, because it affects your mind, is the worst condition that you can have. And so, because I was calling him Ezekiel then, but his new pseudonym in the book is Mavato Firi. Because Mavato was brave enough to talk about this, I thought this story deserved to be read in a book. And ladies and gentlemen, the rest is history. We're here today on the 30th of June, and we have our book. We have a book, don't we, ladies and gentlemen? And because we've been looking at Kajasu and the role Kajasu plays in the social life of people below the age of 18 in Malawi, I thought it is just befitting with the theme of the book launch that I should read something about Malawi and Kajasu. Kajasu, yeah, isn't it? You will also notice that if you've purchased the book, I do talk a lot about the landscape as well. I must say it is a beautiful country, isn't it? And one day I hope to come on a visit. I'm going to be reading from chapter 2, Have Some Kajasu. And I'm going to commence at page 48. I had never heard about Thilo district, north of the Shire River in southern Malawi, before my family had upped stakes once more and relocated there. Mother had announced she had been offered the highest paying job in her lifetime in the locality. Baffled, as I thought, her job years before then at Moa Mission Hospital, Dedza, was the most lucrative one she apparently had had. All I remember that I seemed to have arrived from school in April 2007 to find her sorting out my belongings in readiness for the moving truck she'd spent hundreds of kawachas to hire to transport me to Berlin School in Tyler from a long way. I did not have that many worldly possessions, though again there was a small box room in the back of a rented bungalow I could claim as mine, whereas the girls shared the second one of the 3 rooms. I was going to a distant village on my own, off the beaten track. My mom and siblings will be relocating to a remote part in Salima. In my country, parents dispatching children off to faraway places to further their education is a common occurrence. The controversial subject of the likely contribution of my unstable childhood to the early onset of my illness has never been debated with my relatives. I have read how a disruptive childhood has an adverse effect on one's mental health. My testimony will underscore that the absence of my parents in my life while I stayed in boarding school left me without much needed parental guidance. A considerable period of my teenage years was spent in the confines of hostels in numerous schools. My younger sisters were boarders as well. In 2008, Mom was now living at yet another location, Mikute village in Salima district, so she could do shifts and not have a nagging teenager to worry about. In her absence, I was dipping into my pocket money and experimenting with Kajasu, Taunjani, Chibuku, and Chikokiyani. Luckily brewed beers in Thailand. I loved my new school with the passion Romeo had for Juliet. Some days I would cry incessantly, wishing I would be sent back home. I pretended to have stomach ache one Thursday. The principal, Mr. Langassi, face as sour as a plum, released me temporarily so I could go back home to Mummy and Salima. But she had to work, and I was soon dispatched back with hugs and kisses the same week. I am in no way, shape or form trying to make excuses for why I began using alcohol or visiting Kachasu shebins with my pocket money. I acknowledge the contribution of substance misuse to the exacerbation of my mental disorder. In hindsight, I am looking for plausible reasons why I took solace in beers and spirits. In laying the premises for a depiction of an alcohol-dependent teenager, I feel one must attribute some blame to the absence of parents in my day-to-day life. The easy availability of cachaço in rural areas in Malawi, and the commonly held belief that drinking it is cool. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to hear more about Mofatu's use of cachaço and beers brewed in Malawi, and how he then became dependent on it till he is now recovered. He's now teetotal, and he's spent a good 15 years or so being abstinent from alcohol. He no longer has any desire to drink it. You might have to buy a copy of the book. Do stay with us for the rest of the book lunch, ladies and gents. So tell me a bit about your background. Please tell me where you went to school.
Okay, so I've been to different kind of schools, but I'll start with the most, like the first one, because that was kindergarten. That was in Harvest Temple in Lilongwe, the capital city of Malawi.
And
That was my
okay,
nursery.
And and I wanted to know when you started hearing voices because you were at school, weren't you? How old were you?
Okay, basically, with the way I wrote the story, it was like I was just reminding myself of what was happening. But I started hearing voices when I was 15. When I was in secondary school.
And what happened? What did you hear?
Okay, I was hearing voices like two sides of my sisters, like the other side from my father, the other side from my mother. They were quarreling for me. They were telling me to go to their side, and I couldn't remember everything. But then they were trying to tell me to follow their side. Each of them were telling me what to do, like, "Hey, come with me, follow me, do this, do that," and the rest was just confusion. But that's what I remember from the first time I heard the voices. I was hearing like my sisters were talking to me, like my grandfather
Yeah.
and my grandmother side, yeah, something like that.
And were you talking back to them?
I was not, because I was still trying to figure out what was happening.
Yeah. So you had male and female voices. And
Yes, but then I was thinking that I was imagining them because I wasn't sure, because I've never seen my grandfather from my father's side. So it's like I was just other side was talking to me.
yeah. And
Yes.
so when did it all come to a head? What happened then? Where did it all kick off? Because just from reading your story, there got to a
Yeah.
stage when a lot of things are happening at home, where you were
Yes.
having
Yes.
arguments at home. But what happened? Tell me, when you started hearing the voices at school, what did your mom do?
Okay, my mom took me for medication because she was a professional nurse she was a nurse by profession, I should say. So she had to give me some medication. She was thinking that I had this mental illness, but then she wasn't open to me. She wasn't telling me what it was at first. She wasn't being open. So we were just trying out things that maybe it could be this, it could be that. But what was in her mind, it was that I was bewitched. That was the first thing which she thought. That was her first hand thoughts, that she was thinking that I was bewitched.
Yeah, I want to pick up on that. So your mom, is she quite traditional, even though like she's an educated African lady? Does she still believe like in witchcraft and stuff like that?
Okay, right now my mom is no more, so I could say that she used to still believe in that, because
My sympathy. And I just interrupt and say, I'm sorry, I didn't realize your mom had passed. And I'm so
no,
sorry.
no, it's fine, it's fine. But then she was so much into traditional beliefs that even before she passed on, she told me to go and visit a senior witch doctor so that she could be well. Then I had to say, no, you know what, mom, I think it's best for you just to stay where you are. Let's see what God is going to do for you. I believe that if you stay like this, continue with this traditional stuff, it will not end well with you. I believe that in the next life you won't be able to find peace, because I believe that going to witch doctors is a sin. That's what I believe in myself.
Okay,
So
so did you ever go to a witch doctor then?
herself, yeah, we used to go together.
So
Like
what,
together. The two of us, we used to go together.
so what did they actually say to you then when you went to witch doctor? Describe it to us. So you walked into this room, there's this person who is a traditional healer, which we call witch
Yeah.
doctors. So what was said to yourself and your mom? And tell us how you felt. We want to know the impact it had on you, because that must have been quite frightening for yourself.
At first, they would tell me that it was my intelligence which was messing around with me. When we went to another person, they would say something different. They don't say the same thing. Sometimes they might say the same thing, but mostly it's about somebody else who was behind what was happening with me back then.
Who did
It
they
was
say
very
was
funny. Yeah.
behind? Did they say it was your grandmother? Something like that?
That's what they say. They used to say that my grandmother was bewitching us. My
Which
grandmother, my late father, my uncles. That's what they used to say.
so was it like your paternal grandmother that they said was responsible for casting a spell on yourself?
That's what they used to say. That's what they used to say.
And this must have been very confusing for a 15-year-old.
And about this thing, it started way back because I remember going to witch doctors way before I had schizophrenia diagnosis. It started way back because I could face problems as a young person as well. As a boy, I used to face problems. I would just have headaches out of nowhere. I would start crying because I could have these headaches. I would just have a mood swing. I would face a lot of troubles, and then I would be taken to witch doctors instead of going to hospitals or going for therapy.
Blimey, I mean, that just underscores our belief system in Africa, doesn't it? Where someone who obviously has this beginnings of a mental illness, rather than seek treatment from like a hospital, our people back home felt that they could resolve it through traditional means. Now, tell me, I also read that you were admitted to a psychiatric hospital at some point. How
Yes, I
old were you? And tell us how you found it. What were your experiences?
Okay, in the first place, I was just taken to hospitals as an outpatient. I wasn't being admitted there, but it happened that after my relapsing, after I went to college, my first year, I was sent back because I went away. I had to leave college because of the same illness. I think because I was just thinking that it was not right for me because the course which I was taking, I was thinking that it was not fitting me. So I thought of going to learn somewhere else. I did not know that that was the lapsing of my condition. So after it became a problem again, after I had to hit my mom, they took me to a mental asylum, which was called Buera Central Hospital. It is in Lilongwe right now. It's still there right as of now. So when I went there, I was put in a room whereby there were other people who had the mental illnesses. But at first, I was put in the ladies section. I do not know why, but maybe it's because I was violent, so they were afraid that I would be beating some people and the people would retaliate and they would hurt me. That's what I was thinking. But then I don't know why I was put in the ladies section at first. That's what happened back then. I think this was in 2012. Yeah, 2012.
Hmm.
2000.
And
Yes.
tell us what the hospital was like, because when I came to
Yes.
England back in the 90s, I told
Yeah.
you I went to university and I told you the first thing I'd done was
Yeah.
I did mental health nursing. And I said,
Yes.
I told you that in the early days when I came to England, when I obtained a degree in nursing, I said I used to work in the NHS. So I've previously been a registered mental health nurse. And it was the back of that I went back to uni and I did criminology and social policy. And that's why, I then took an interest in police work. But I have worked in government hospitals here, NHS hospitals, and I'm familiar with people being sectioned and I'm familiar with antipsychotics. So, I mean, when we've had several conversations, private conversations, you and I have told you I have quite a good academic knowledge of this area because I have worked as a registered mental health nurse. So I'm no longer on the register because I'm not to do police work. But were you informal or were you sectioned? Because informal patients are coming voluntarily. Were you put on a section at all? Or do you understand what that means?
Here, you do not go to you go to the hospital voluntarily, of course. But then, when you have a problem like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, what they do what's good for you, so they take you to the hospital. So I think I did not choose to go there, but I was taken because I had a problem and they wanted me to have a solution. So that's when I went there. And you asked me to describe what this hospital was. It was more of a prison because you would not even visit people outside. You would not see people outside. They would bring food to you inside there, and there were cells in there. And sometimes, if you misbehave, they would beat us. That's what they would do. They'd beat us with these clubs, which are being kept by guards. They would beat us. That's what used to happen that side.
So you're telling me that the nurses, the mental health staff in Malawi, who were there to
They were. They weren't
care.
nurses, I should say. They weren't nurses. There were some security officers, I think,
Okay.
but they were stationed there in the mental health facility. That's where they were stationed.
And what
I
did
think
they
it's
used to
because
beat you with? Can I just interrupt? Because that has really
okay, they used to beat us
really
with
like upset. Yeah.
plastic sticks, which are so hard and stiff. The ones which are being kept by guards, the security guards, they keep these kind of sticks. They're shaped as a gun, but then it's not a gun; it's just a stick. But then it's plastic. but it's very tough plastic. It hurts so much.
Yeah, so like a cane, like some kind of
Yeah,
like.
something like a cane, yes.
So, I mean, was that the way they contained what was perceived as violent behavior? So, what they did was they end up beating inpatients.
If you were misbehaving, let's say you were beating other patients, you were doing things which they did not want you to do, instead of handling you properly, or maybe I should say that was the proper way of handling people like us, but they used to beat us. I remember
Well,
being
can I
locked.
just stop you there and say you keep using a lot of terms which I have to correct, because don't forget I was registered in the UK as a nurse, and I've worked as a police officer, and there are certain expressions that we don't use, and I have to use the correct expression because this is the public platform, and also I don't believe in stereotyping people.
Okay,
So
okay. Yeah,
we
go
don't
on.
use the word misbehave, we use the word triggered or heightened. So when you were heightened because of your schizophrenia, which we're going to talk about in a bit, when you were heightened because of your schizophrenia, then you would act out what was going on in your mind. And often you would take this out on people who were there to get on other patients. Because maybe they were, maybe they were the ones that triggered your behavior. So I mean, tell me a bit about schizophrenia. How would you define it? Because we need people to understand what it is.
Okay, schizophrenia, it's something which plays with the mindset. To me, it's different because right now I'm way better off, because even some people do not even know that I have this condition. I have to tell them so that they have to be like in good terms with me. But then I still hear some voices now and then. It's like now they're just thoughts. But I know that these are the voices which I used to hear back then. They're just thoughts.
They're like
It's
what they
really,
call intrusive thoughts.
yes, they're intrusive
Intrusive
thoughts. Yes.
thoughts. So what do they?
Yeah.
How do you hear these thoughts? Are they persistent?
It's something which just tells me to do something, and then I have to say no. I have to disagree. I have to, maybe I shake my head and then I react in a way that if someone could be seeing, I would be thinking, what is he thinking about? They would say, what is he thinking about? What is he doing? But then
So
it's
you
something which I
react to
react
non-visible
to before.
stimuli. So we
It's
say
like,
to non-visible
yes,
stimuli, you react to something
yes,
that people that do not suffer with this mental health condition would not
yes.
react to. So you still have auditory hallucinations. This is what we call them. And do you have visual hallucinations as well? Do you see things?
I wouldn't say I see things. I don't recall seeing things, but I think back then I used to see things back then. But right now I do not see things. I don't.
So tell me about how you perceived by people when they knew you were unwell. Tell me how your society where you live in. Please say the name again because I'm very bad at pronouncing names.
Right now I live in Nino.
So tell me how they reacted to people like yourself when you probably were going through a crisis, or when you're there, were you somewhere else?
Okay, right now I've just gotten here, so I wouldn't say I know how they react to people like me. But then the places where I used to live back there, it was kind of difficult because even when I had some side effects, let's say there's a problem with my mobility or the way I walk, or maybe I'm seeing like I'm not walking so well, and I would see people would be laughing at me.
So people make fun of you. Yeah. And
Yes, they would be making fun of
there's a lot of social stigma, isn't there?
Yes, there is. But
Yes.
then if we get close and I start talking to them, they would act as if nothing is wrong, and we'll talk and have a conversation. But I would still know that even if after I'm gone, they would still be talking about me. But then it affected me in ways that I failed to have normal relationships with people.
Yeah.
I did not quite complete my education, because even right now I don't have a degree. I just have a diploma, which I think if I did not have this condition, I wouldn't have just a diploma. I would maybe complete. I would have maybe a master's degree by now, because with the way I was doing well at school back then, I would be somewhere else with my education. So I think this condition, it
Okay.
held me back
Yeah.
big time.
Okay. Thank you so much.
There, I'm the gentleman whose story is all about, and these are some of the reasons why I wanted my story to be told. First of all, I'd like to change the way people think about people like me, people who are diagnosed of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. First of all, people think that people like me do not belong to the same society that they belong in. They get to think that we're outcast and we do things abnormally all the time and we act out of our own will, which is not true, because if one is taking medication and they follow what the doctors or the therapists are telling them to do, they get to act in a normal way. So I believe that people should change their mindset and stop thinking that people with such conditions cannot behave or act just as these other people. I would also like to let these people know that anyone else can suffer from this kind of condition at any given time. And all you have to do is just be careful, take care of yourself, avoid some stuff which can trigger these mental illnesses. The reason why I believe that I was diagnosed with schizophrenia and I became sick was because of my dependence on alcohol. I started alcohol at a very young age, maybe of 13. That was in 2008 when I was in 3. At a certain secondary school. I want to mention it. You read it in the book, let me forget it. And after starting taking alcohol, it became a habit that I was feeling that I would not stop. But after a little while, after realizing that I was doing the wrong thing to myself, that's when I had to stop. But then it had already backfired. So I'm just urging the youth that if they think they can stop taking alcohol based on whatever reasons they have, this is one of the reasons. You don't have to be taking alcohol because you never know that maybe you have mental illness in your bloodline, and if you continue taking alcohol, you might become sick. So it's just a warning. I'd like people to stop doing that. And second reason is that I'd like people to know that this thing can happen to anyone, as I already explained, and they have to embrace and love the people who have schizophrenia and bipolar disorder so that they can live in an environment where they feel like they are loved and they can tell people whatsoever is passing through their mind and what's going on with them so that they can live a healthy life and have a better environment for them. So basically there are a lot of reasons, but then I couldn't just explain them all, but these are the main reasons why I wanted to explain, because as myself, a person who has been ill for a very long time, maybe it's been maybe almost like 12 to 15 years, but then I have faced so many difficulties. I have suffered in terms of my academics. I couldn't do well. In terms of finding a job, I couldn't find a job because I didn't do well in my academics. But before, I was a very bright student, so things just changed out of the blue after I got diagnosed by this illness. So there are a lot of stuff which I can explain, like stigma from people who I thought they would be there for me. They wouldn't, because they would be telling people, this guy is a crazy guy, you don't have to associate with him. Whatever he says is not a thing which you can trust or hear. I'll make a decision out of it. So yeah, basically I'll just leave it here. The rest you find in the book, get to read it, and you see that what I'm trying to say here is making sense.